Everybody. We're going to be looking at a Charlie Chaplin film called Modern Times. For many of you, this will be the first time watching a film of this nature. It is not, technically speaking, a silent film, although there is very little dialogue. There is music. This was created in the era in which people had the capability to make movies that were synchronized with dialogue. However, Charlie Chaplin intentionally made a movie that didn't include that, and we're going to talk eventually about why. But one of the things that you need to do right away for me is take out this sheet that you were given in class today. This is what you're going to use to at least to start responding to the clip that you're going to watch tonight for homework. It's a very short clip. Before we start, of course, I want you to think about the the nature of this class, humanities, right? We have three courses here: art, history, and English. And this movie is sort of the coalescing of three of those things. It's set in a particular time in American history. The movie was made during the 1930s, the dirty 30s and the Great Depression. And certainly it is reflective of that time, and it is certainly a socially conscious movie, and that creates arguments. So you're going to be thinking about the kinds of arguments that Charlie Chaplin is making. As a visual medium, obviously it is something that you can look at through the lens of how you analyze art and how you've looked at art throughout the year. But also film has elements that we talk about with respect to literature. And so we're going to be thinking about some of the terminology that we often apply to literature and art and how we apply that to film. So the first thing we're going to be looking at, of course, tonight is the technique of juxtaposition, symbolism. Of course, keep in mind the use of the word rhetoric or rhetorical, things that are done for argumentation. And you're going to apply those tools to the very short opening clip of this scene, which we're going to see in a minute. But first, I want you to take a look at this promotional picture for the film, and I want you to see if this reminds you of anything that you have seen in the past. I'm thinking about Mr. Palumbo and your art history. And of course, you should recognize it right away that it's very reminiscent of this image. Of course, the Lewis Hine image called Powerhouse Mechanic. There are other images in this film that are like it. So one thing to think about is, are there any connections between Lewis Hine, right? And you know what he did in terms of exposing certain aspects of the world of the workman, and using photography as a way to do that. And is Charlie Chaplin on a similar mission? Something for you to think about. Okay, so what I want to do is take a look at the first scene, but before we do that, again, you're going to be thinking about, what is this movie about? So for homework, you're going to have to complete this box here. And then we're going to be looking at the first clip, which is to respond to this question. Explain the significance of the imagery of the sheep being herded. Consider what it is juxtaposed with, and how is this rhetorical? Okay, so we're going to go to some questions that I want you to think about even before we watch the clip, which are: juxtaposition is when you put things together next to each other, physically or sequentially, right? Either in space or in time, for the purpose of contrasting them. Symbolism, you should know from forever, when objects, characters, or situations represent ideas. And of course, rhetorical is when anything is used for the purpose of argumentation. Now that can be visual stuff like movies, or it could also be, words like essays, of course. This image contains sheep, the opening image. So we should think about, before we even look at it, what do sheep represent, right? How about black sheep? There is a black sheep in this opening image. And of course, you should think about sheep in a biblical sense. And you should also think back on how sheep were represented in the Grapes of Wrath. So let's go ahead and take a look at this opening scene. Notice how it starts with a clock ticking. I'm going to zip through this a little bit just to get to the part that I'm interested in. One thing about these old movies, they put all like the credits in the beginning, so it kind of looks like the ends of modern movies. Notice the quote, and well, hey now, let's get back to that quote in there. Contains language that should look familiar to you, right? Some Thomas Jefferson language. All right, here's the image. Sheep, black sheep in the middle. A bunch of men, presumably workers, filing out of a subway, going toward a factory. Okay, and that's it in terms of what we're going to look at tonight for homework. So again, go to your question sheet. Make a prediction about what modern times will be about. Think about what symbolism is and how it's used, and then answer question 1. Explain the significance of the imagery of the sheep being herded. Consider what it's juxtaposed with. How is this rhetorical?